411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that impact us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
Have you ever thought about relocating? Wanting to go someplace better? You're thinking the place where I am right now, the street or the community or the neighborhood or the city needs some help. And then right before you make that move, you think, maybe I should stay. Maybe I can help this street, this community, this neighborhood, this city make the changes in order to flourish. Hello, everyone. I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live, Real People, Real Talk. That scenario that I just mentioned, it came about when I thought about my guest, and that is Kurt Owens. So I want to say thank you for joining me. You are the pastor of Flourish Church of Milwaukee. You're also the founder of Bridge Builders. So we have a lot to talk about. You have an interesting story, a lot of facets to the story, and I want to hit some of them, but I know the podcast is a little short, but we will talk as much as we can, hit as much as we can. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be here.
You know, I mentioned that scenario, leaving that place, looking for something better, and then deciding, maybe I shouldn't. You were living in Milwaukee. You thought about going to Grafton. So tell me about that. What happened and what changed your mind?
Yeah, the whole mindset is like you do what you have to do to get out of the city.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many friends and family who have done the same thing. It's like you haven't arrived until you found a way to get out.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the mindset. I completely disconnected from a neighborhood I lived in. A house I bought when I was 25 years old. And,
Wow.
And so definitely at watch the neighborhood change. It's like, yeah, it's about time to get out of here. The neighborhood is kind of gone to hell in a handbasket. And I remember somebody asking me, it's like, do you think it's important to live in the neighborhood for which you pastor? And I'm like, well, maybe for other people, but not for me. I lived in Milwaukee my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know the lay of the land. And so it's going to be okay for me to drive in. And I remember doing the informational before we decided to plant the second church around the corner, which I had planted in my lifetime. And somebody came to the informational and just lit into me. And the church that I was planting at that point in time was predominantly the makeup of the congregation at that point in time was predominantly white, but we were planting a location which we were looking to become more multi-ethnic, and it was going to be on the north side of Milwaukee, right around the corner from my house. And somebody just lit into me from the neighborhood. Essentially, I was blackface for a white church, going to make a bunch of promises, going to lead the neighborhood, and he just railed into me at that informational session. And I tried to keep my cool, and I remember just responding eventually, like, hold up, I went to school in this neighborhood. I mean, this library used to be the game room that I used to play in. I went to the movie theater around the corner. I went to church around the corner. In fact, I live right around the corner. And I heard the world stop because I heard myself say, I live right around the corner. And I had almost forgotten that I was still a resident of the community. And I just went home that evening and told my wife, I don't think we can leave. And it was at that moment that guy, he finally let go of me. He didn't drill me anymore once I told him that I was a resident of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew at that point in time that I actually had to stay in order to make an impact in the community.
Wow. That's a major decision, isn't it?
It was. It really was. It was.
Yeah. He must have really tore into you.
It did. It really did. And I think I began to think about it. It's like there's not many pastoral friends that I have that actually live in Milwaukee.
In the community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the executive directors for nonprofit organizations don't live in the city. Everybody drives in. Everybody comes and steal from Milwaukee and take it back someplace else.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's problematic.
Mm-hmm.
That's problematic. And we don't think it's problematic until we just step back from the situation and look at it. It's like, how do we improve it if, quality, good people don't stay in the city to
Right.
make an impact in it?
Yeah, you talk about that, and it makes me think of how even our police officers, a lot of them have moved out of the
Yeah.
city and they drive into the city
Exactly.
to work.
Everything. Our teachers, our police officers, our firefighters, everybody drives in. And that's what Milwaukee is. It's like we drive in, we pilgrimage, and we take it back to other communities, and we keep wondering what's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So you decided to stay, and you founded Bridge Builders. Before we get into the whole evolution of how that came about, let's just talk about what is Bridge Builders. I love the name, but
Yeah.
what exactly is it?
Yeah, so Bridge Builders is a neighborhood a development organization, and we exist to inspire inner city innovation that will holistically transform neighborhoods one block at a time. And when we talk about innovation, it's like we've been trying to fight some of the issues in Milwaukee for years, doing some of the same things, and the problem just seems to get worse. And so how do we innovatively begin to start attacking some of the issues in the community? I think the best way for that to happen is from bottom up solutions, people that have actually come from the community, people that have actually come from poverty and gotten themselves out of poverty are probably going to be some of the people that's going to be able to best address some of those situations in our community. And so we look at holistic transformation in four quadrants: spiritual, economic, physical, and cultural transformation. And for me, those were the things that were central to my life and helped me change my life. I once helped destroy the community, and I took a model that was used when I was helped destroying the community to use it actually for good, to transform it. And so that was the concept, and our idea is, how do we do that one block at a time? Let's not try to solve the whole city problem, but if we can solve one block at a time, we can duplicate that to other blocks, other cities, other states, other countries.
You have a focus area?
We do. Our focus area is about 140 blocks. Now, we just extended to about 170 blocks because the church that we just acquired a couple years ago, we've adopted a portion of that neighborhood as well. So, but we run from like 37th Street to far west as 51st Street, and as far south to Congress, and as far north to Silver Spring. And so that's kind of like the old Milwaukee neighborhood, Thurston Woods area. There's a good number of home ownership in the community, but there's also, you got those pockets of rental properties with absentee landlords and things like that kind of help bring the neighborhood down. And so we're kind of focusing on that. And so our mindset was, we had closed down drug houses, and only to see them return again because the people who owned them, really didn't have a stake in the community.
Right.
And so we decided, well, let's not just close the drug house down, let's buy it.
Yeah.
And so we buy the house, renovate the house, and it becomes a lighthouse in the community, or it becomes a homeowner occupied home.
That is so important because in Milwaukee, we have a problem with the homes. I can get a message on my phone or get something in the mail saying, do you want to sell your home? These investors from outside are buying up the stock and then renting it out at these crazy rates that people can't really afford. And people who want to become homeowners, they don't have all that cash to just buy a home.
Yeah, that's become a huge problem. I get so many, same thing. I get many calls. I'm like, how are these people? They know my name. They know the addresses of the houses I own. I'm like, there's got to be some software out there where this is happening. But again, it goes to this mindset that Milwaukee is a place that you can pilgrimage. And so Milwaukee is a place where investors all over the world are actually focusing on, because it's known as a place where the city's not going to hold you accountable, and you can collect great rents, and you can buy a property for a little bit of nothing
Yeah.
because the property values are going down. And so we find ourselves, in bidding wars with investors in our community. And so we tried to buy the same software that the investors have so we could actually connect with our residents as well. And we want our residents to stay,
Yeah.
but if they decide not to stay, is to actually sell the properties to us, and we will make sure that those properties remain as homeowner occupied homes.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Another thing that I always think of is if everybody could put on their thinking cap and realize that if you help, or if the people who are in impoverished areas, who are, really struggling, they're hardworking people, but they're struggling, if those people are elevated, we all benefit.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that is missed. And what you're doing is helping people to elevate, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, because I think I was a resident in this community that had given up hope. I just man, this neighborhood has gone to hell in a handbasket, and the best thing for me to do is to leave it. And you just cast judgment on the entire neighborhood. But as I began to just go door by door, knocking on doors, introducing myself to some of my neighbors and finding out the stories behind the situation that's going on. And one of the things that I realized, like, there's 36 houses on a square block. And what I realized is, like, there was like 28 of those houses on the block that were people suffering just in silence, just like me. It was the 8 houses that were problematic on the block that screamed the loudest. And that's all you saw. You look down the alley, you saw the garbage, and it looked like the whole neighborhood that went to hell. But if you really zeroed in, you realize, hey, this is only like 3 or 4 houses where the garbage is at.
Right.
And so what we try to do is, like, how do we unify the residents in the community and reinstill hope in them to see that like we are the stakeholders in this community, and that we can fight back if we come together and stand up and make some of those things happen. So we've done different things, like, there was mobile drug deals that was happening, in front of people's houses. The police couldn't do anything about it. Like, by the time you got the police, they're gone. Like, there's really nothing you could do. So we start putting signs out saying, like, mobile drug deals being recorded. Actually, something as simple as that, it helped,
Nice.
because when you seen those signs throughout the block, like, people will go to the next block and be able to do it. So again, it's just instilling hope into people that, hey, we can make a difference if we kind of stick together.
There are some folks from your background who might be surprised at what you're doing now, right?
Yeah.
And you alluded to it earlier, but your life took a different path. I mean, you're a pastor now.
Yeah.
I think you're a PK too,
I
a
am.
pastor's kid. But somehow things got off track, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Were you a drug dealer?
I most certainly was. I most certainly was. I think I was attracted to it very young, or at least I was attracted to the lifestyle. I seen people in my community. Most of the people in my community were blue collar. I'd never seen a black lawyer. I'd never seen a black doctor. I'd never seen black white collar anything. Neighborhood I grew up in, it was just all blue collar. I wasn't attracted to blue collar. My dad was blue collar. I just wasn't. And I believed that I couldn't be anything that I wanted to be in life. And so I just figured that I'm going to have to make my own way. And it's crazy, because the same year that I started college was the same year I became a drug dealer.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And I was going to school during the days, living the life of a drug dealer at night. And I became really good as being a drug dealer. And so I dropped out of college, and I thought life was grand at the moment. And all of a sudden, I was shot at a number of times. I was robbed by gunpoint.
Wow.
And probably the last time I watched friends get murdered. Go to prison for a long time, and for whatever reason, like, God's hand was on my life. The last time I was robbed, I was told to get down on my knees, and I just I'm about to get executed.
Wow.
And I just remember just saying, like, I only got enough time to say, Lord, forgive me. And I did. When I seen that I was still alive, I'm like, God, if you get me out of this situation, I promise I'll change my life. And I was able to escape, long story short. And I knew that, like, God had spared my life, didn't understand why, because I did nothing to make him happy. But he did. And so, that began a different road for me. And I ended up taking a job as a delivery driver in Sussex.
Stop right there. We're going to come back and
Okay.
we'll delve into that.
Okay.
Stay with us. I'm talking to Kurt Owens. He is the founder of Bridge Builders. We'll be right back.
Women are bad with money. That's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now we've got something to say.
Save it. It's time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Until we're no longer 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
Save it. The falsehoods, the feelings of fault.
Then, the funds. Learn how to save for your retirement at wesaysaveit.org.
I've always been told I gotta be strong. Thick skin, tough as nails. But to be everything for everybody, it wears on you. Black don't crack, they say. But it can. We all can. Reach out to a friend if you see them going through it. No matter who you are, being vulnerable is what makes us whole. Learn how to help at seizetheawkward.org.
Welcome back to the 411 Live. Kurt, I stopped you when you were about to get into the Sussex experience. So what happened in Sussex that really kind of changed your thinking?
Yeah, well, people wanted to kill me in Milwaukee, so it was a great, it was a great outlet to spend all of my time in Sussex. And I was preparing myself for, my dad was born in 1936 in Mississippi, so my idea of white America was formed by, my dad, and so I was embracing myself for racism and all of those things in Sussex, and actually, I experienced just the opposite. I was kind of confused, and it was at that moment that I realized I couldn't put everybody in the same in the same basket. Sometimes we just use broad strokes. But I took a job there, making $7.50 an hour. It was pretty humbling. But my boss, he just began to show me love, and I don't know why. Again, at that moment, and he
was white.
He was white, which was surprising to me again. And he promoted me over and over and over again. Made me warehouse manager. Brought me into the front office. He told me he had trained me on anything I wanted to learn in the front office if I'd be willing to punch out. I did, and when a position opened up in the front office, he would put me in it, and I just kept working my way up. In a period of a year and a half, I went from a delivery driver for a pharmaceutical company, I might add.
How ironic, right?
Right. And my route was in Oconomo Walk, Delavan, Watertown, Jefferson. I mean, places where, it ain't a whole lot of black folks at. And again, I had pleasant experiences, which to my surprise. And so I worked my way up to like second in charge of that branch. And we went from like the last ranked branch in the country to number one. And I got promoted to run 13 branches around the country in Jackson, Mississippi. And so my experience took me to Jackson, Mississippi. And at this point in time, I'm still a college dropout. And I go to Jackson, Mississippi, and it was there that I seen a progressive black community that I'd never been exposed to.
In Jackson, Mississippi.
All of a sudden, I stick out like a sore thumb. The church I went to, I was probably like the only one in that church that didn't have a college degree. And I just saw black professional after black professional. All of a sudden, I realized that the segregation that I experienced in Milwaukee didn't exist there. Like, black people lived everywhere. And that did something to me. I needed to see that. And I saw people my same age that had accomplished great things. And I'm like, man, this could have been me if I'd have stayed in college. And it was at that moment that I decided, like, I think I'm going to go back to college. And so I went back to college and just never stopped.
You know, listening to your story, do you think that that is part of what's happening? Because there are a lot of young kids who are entertaining the idea of maybe selling drugs or are doing it, and they're like little business people.
Yeah.
They actually have skills that
Absolutely.
they don't know that could be used in a legitimate way.
Yes.
It's that exposure that they're missing.
It is.
You know?
It definitely is. And that's what I always say. I always try to take like even the experiences from my own life and like, man, if I can just like get that over to some others, I think it may benefit them. Just being exposed to it. It certainly won't work for everybody, but if there's somebody that's out there that has all the skill level and this ability, I always talk about this hustle, this grind. I'm like, if you're a hustler, like regardless of what it is that you're dealing, like you could be successful. And I just say even a guy that was successful as a drug dealer could be successful in doing something else in his life because like the grind is the same, but it's being legitimate and being exposed to some things that are different. And so for me, again, being exposed to a multi-ethnic lifestyle and realizing like everybody of the other don't hate me and everybody ain't racist. And it's not saying that racism don't exist, but it's also understanding that there's some good people that's out there that if you can get plugged in with, it expands your networks. So my social networks expand, which meant that my economic networks expanded. Like all of that expanded because that wasn't in my community. But that exposure was really, really, really impactful for me and help point me in some of the right directions in my life. And so
that brings us to bridge builders.
Yeah.
And that multi-ethnic, multiracial dynamic. Because that's part of bridge builders.
Oh, big time. Big time. And so one of the things for me is like, how do I help expose people from the central city to people who live in the suburbs that they would never have an opportunity to connect because many things that we do in our communities are segregated, specifically in Milwaukee, known as the most segregated city in the country. And so if you're not intentional about it, it won't happen. And so since I was pastoring a church that at one point that had a majority white congregation, I would bring people into our community that was, most of the people that were coming into our community were predominantly white. And they were coming in nervous. Am I going to be perceived as the great white hope? And on all of those things. But the thing that made it impactful was as they knocked on doors in our neighborhood and said, hey, my pastor lives in this neighborhood. Well, people in my neighborhood didn't visualize me as being a pastor of white people knocking at their door. And so it just really opened up the door for people who were different to come into our community because they knew that they were coming in at an invitation by myself. And so we were able to kind of work hand in hand with people in the community to really help build up the community. So we changed garage doors, we changed siding in the alley. When we began our work in the alley, because that's where I saw the drug deals happening. All of a sudden, you put 50 white people in an alley in the central city, no drug deals are happening. And actually, it was so amazing. People would pull over because they want to know what was going on. And this was like 40th and Hampton. And so you got 50 white people walking up and down the block on 40th and Hampton. People pulling over like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And it was a conversation starter, and it allowed us to make more connections with residents in our community. So it really ended up being a really powerful thing. And so that's that cultural transformation piece. And so when you got an employer and the unemployed working on the roof together, the unemployed is now working for that employer. We've seen couples meet each other on the rooftop that are now married. So it's just really been interesting to see how
the residual effects,
just really creating a platform of bringing people together.
There's so many different concepts within bridge builders. The lighthouse.
Yes.
How many lighthouses do you have?
Right now, we currently have 2 lighthouses, and this is where we take a dilapidated property, renovate that property, and we would bring in a long-term missionary who's missional to that particular block, and their job is to just serve the needs of the 36 people in that block, to keep them united, report any problems that's happening, really kind of police that neighborhood. And those lighthouses are working in conjunction with what we call a hub house. A hub house serves a total of 6 blocks in our target area, and that is where our staff actually works out of. So we will never have a commercial building. We will always work out of houses because we want to be like part of the fabric of a community. And so once we saturate that 6 blocks, we move on to another 6 blocks with another hub house and another 6 lighthouses. And so we've been casting that vision quite a bit, but you know, it takes a little time to kind of get that going with the fundraising and all of that. You know, it's a ton, and it's much bigger than what we can do alone. So, but that's the concept. Interestingly, it's the same concept that was used to destroy a neighborhood. Hub house, drug house.
Right.
Every 6. So I decided, well, let's take that same concept and use it for good.
So how is the community embracing it?
I think the community is embracing it well. We have, as far as our neighborhood meetings, you know, when we first started, it was kind of difficult. Then we had to deal with the pandemic. So, you know, much of what we did was bringing people together. Pandemic said keep people apart. But we have really been able to engage our residents in ways, I think, that are probably different than other organizations, because, I mean, organizations that probably have 10 times the budget of us don't bring in the same resident engagement as we do. And I think the difference for us is our presence.
Yeah.
And when I say our presence is, I have a sense of urgency that I actually live in the community. So when the gunshots go off, I hear the gunshots. When the street lights don't come on because the city won't turn them on, or they won't fix the streets, like, I experience that as well. So my urgency level is different. And so we have a presence that is probably different than many of the other organizations. Like, we never leave. We're always there. The hub house model is the fact that is another reason why I think we have more resident engagement than probably organizations that's 10, 20 times bigger than us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. If someone listening and they think, wow, I like this, can I help? What can I do? What can they do?
Well, if you go to our website at bridgebuildersmke.org, there's an opportunity for you to serve, you know, have an opportunity to come out and just kind of see what we do on Saturday Serve Day. Or if you're a person that don't want to get your hands dirty and you want to throw a check at the problem,
You'll take it.
I'm not one of those people that make people feel bad for throwing a check at. Everybody got their gift, and if all you can do is throw a check at the problem, throw a check at the problem. We got some people on the ground floor with boots on the ground that's ready to do it. We just need to be resourced.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
The whole concept is great. The hub house, the lighthouse, you know, people coming together, multiracial, multi-ethnic. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I congratulate you on this.
Well, I appreciate that, and you know, it's I'm still trying to keep my wife engaged with this, because she's followed me on this mindset, but every so often she asks, like, is it, you think we can move yet? I'm like, no, not yet. Not yet. We gonna keep pushing. We're gonna keep pushing.
Yeah. It takes a good woman
to
help a good man, you know? Hey, Kurt Owens. He is the founder of Bridge Builders and the pastor of Flourish Church of Milwaukee. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey,
it's been a great discussion.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us for another edition. Remember, we are a nonprofit organization, so if you feel so inclined, go to our website, the411live.org, and help us out. Until next time, I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. If you would like to check out past episodes, there are many ways. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like and watch us on Facebook. Watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, go to our website, the411live.org.